You're listening to Can I Get a Retake, where education meets innovation.
Today we're talking with Kaustavi Sarkar, author of two, soon to be three publications with Great River Learning. And so I just want to dive right into it. You started dancing at 5 years old, and now decades later, you're running art organizations on two continents. So looking back, what was the specific moment when you realized that dance wasn't just something you do, but was going to be the lens through which you viewed the world?
It's it really has been intuitive. It really has been experiential, and it really has been um, sort of phenomenological, if I may put on my author's hat, really diving into my experience. I definitely am way more kinesthetic than only intellectual. So I am grateful to be able to read, write, and dance. In not in any particular order, but those three are my favorite verbs. And maybe I don't change. They have remained my favorite verbs since I was 5 years old. And now, decades later, yes, it has been interesting how I have been able to turn passion into profession. That is not something very common. I look around, I see that's really not the norm. Um, and I also want to cite privilege, the dance education and higher education in the United States is still by far too sparse, and there's way more supply than demand. So really having being able to have this title of associate professor in a tenured position. I just got tenure, thank goodness.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think it's definitely one of privilege, so want to cite that. Um, I will say that institutions have their boundaries and also their affordances. I think institutional affordance, I would say, of the requirement of research, teaching, and service, that has definitely shaped my workflow. I think definitely it has shaped my workflow where now I can say research, teaching, and service seamlessly sort of weave into one another. My most important or the thing that I really enjoy the most is serving my field, and that's why arts organizations are my way of serving the fields, serving artists, being in communication with dance educators, serving scholars. So I'm grateful that I'm able to look at the field of dance in a holistic capacity, in a comprehensive manner. And I stay very grounded and rooted to my practice. I return to my yoga mat every morning. Um, so that just tells me that, every day is different. Balance is not a given thing. One day you can be off balance, one day you can be well balanced. So I think that is a very visceral, kinesthetic experience that I can then bring to my positionality as an author or my work as I'm serving industry experts.
Mhm.
You said something interesting about the supply versus the demand. And right now there's that conversation with Timothy Chalamet talking about the relevance of things like ballet and opera and other forms of, you know, uh, artwork as a social force. What would your feelings be towards that? What would you say if you had the microphone to respond to those words?
Yeah, those are big words, and I want to be careful in terms of what are my affordances and what are my capacities. I think I introduce myself as the fossil in the room. I do traditional forms that are thousands of years old, and I sort of take pride in the archaeological timeline. However, you do need to critique me to go on and innovate the field, take the field in all different directions. So I am that traditional rock, and I'm happy to be that rock. But yeah, I mean, my art form is Odissi. Odissi is an Eastern Indian dance form, and it is a traditional form, and like all traditional forms, it's flawed. However, it's still marginalized, and it's still sort of not as appreciated or recognized, especially in US academia. So one thing that I work in terms of the social dimension that Michelle, you asked, I really try to look at the inequities in arts in the US. And I try to see how arts in the US are specifically determined. And my research lies in looking at arts education in particular, and how arts education then it can be more of an integrated STEM, STEAM, all of that. However, it does stem from a particular cultural landscape. It does stem from a particular historical time frame, and looking at the role of dances from the South Asian diaspora, such as Odissi. So my work primarily lies in looking at inequities in the arts field in general in the United States, because that's where my research lies. And I work with multiple populations. I work with scholars, where we have a journal initiative. It's called South Asian Dance Intersections. I work with educators and run a professional teacher training institute. So that is something I work with early career educators to figure out their path in the navigate their ways in the US. I work with artists. They come to events that I curate. I curate anywhere between 4 to 5 events in a year all over the world. Right now, the next event is May 1 to 3. It's a conference. We have this conference for the since 2019. We went to hybrid and online during the pandemic and post-pandemic years, and this year we have one day as virtual only, and the other 2 days as in person. And so these events are places where I really try my level best to have a wide range of demographics, exchange knowledge, work with each other. So we have students as young as pre-K, elementary, middle, high school, all the way to PhD researchers and established scholars giving book talks. So we have a whole range, and we have many artists who would come and perform in this conference. So it's called Odissi Odyssey. That is the conference franchise that I do. And some of the work, my latest publication with GRL, Moving Praxis, Transforming Worlds, came out of my research in the inequities in the arts, where I'm looking at how South Asian diasporic arts practices can interact, integrate with mainstream arts education. And that's why the GRL's publication is key towards that. Yeah.
You mentioned Odyssey earlier, and in preparing for today, I did a little research to learn more about you, and this was something that I was not familiar with whatsoever, and I'm guessing quite a few listeners are in the same boat as me. So, for someone who's encountering this form for the first time, what are some of the things that they should be paying attention to? Um, is there something specific or movement that helps a newcomer like me unlock the meaning of the form?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very beautiful. So it is
Mm.
stuck in the realm of beauty. Um, and I think the best way to describe it is a book title that I'll quote by Dr. Nandini Sekand. Her book is called Languid Bodies, Grounded Stances. So that already tells you there is a upper lower dichotomy. The upper body is languid, lazy, relaxed, and the lower body is very grounded, so very weighted. So if you are seeing Odyssey, definitely costume wise, it has very particular tastes and flavors. It has a headgear that emulates architecture and sculpture from the land of Orissa, the Eastern Indian state where Odyssey comes from. If you look at the costume, the fabric also gives you a very particular texture that you can relate to the local regional fabric, and that's handicraft. So that there's also a lot of condensation of history, condensation of culture, even in the way the stitched costumes are uh, created from these large pieces of fabric called saris, and they are handcrafted handicraft saris. And other than that, it's very ornate. So you do have a lot of,
Mhm.
like, as I said, I'm the fossil in the room, right? So it's very ornate, lots of jewelry. Um, and so subtlety is not its game. It's very in your face. It's colorful, lots of beautiful colors. Yeah, and in terms of intricacy, it's an intricate form. It requires years of training, and it doesn't cover a whole lot of space. So, to an untrained eye, it seems like, oh my gosh, nothing is happening. But trust me, a lot is happening, just in that one place movement. Yeah.
How did you take on learning this form? What was that process like, and what inspired you to do so?
Learning this form was, again, I wish I have some more profound answers to give for some, but truth says different. My mom just took me to a dance class, and I maintain 24/7, 365 attendance. I could get those attendance awards if there were any.
Yep.
Attend everything and maybe some more. Yeah, I will say that the form uh, is very grounded and very languid, uh, and that gives a necessary or a very ornate flow, right?
Mhm.
And all of this is happening in a geometric capacity. So for people like me, who need some structure in life. Like, I learn better when I'm taught. So I feel this sort of engagement with dance was perfect. I'm thinking of Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi's flow state, right? And that flow state and the embodied flow in dance, I feel is very similar, really, really similar. The flow in the dance is interesting because here you have not just a neck up challenge, right? You have a well coordinated challenge of different parts of your body, lots of isolations. Maybe one part of the body is in direct opposition with another part of the body. So there is a significant coordination challenge. And when you're able to accomplish it, right? Then comes the growth, and then comes the sense of flow, sense of accomplishment, and hence further up, challenging yourself beyond that. Yes.
Oh, thank you for going into
Mhm.
that a little bit more. I'm definitely was the same person in the sense where I needed all the participation awards and I kind of went from thing to thing, but I'm glad that that led to you having such an impactful career.
Thank you, Michelle. And I do want to um, underscore Odissi as a career, also because it does exist as a career in an institutional capacity in India. There are Odissi dancers, right? That is something that one can claim as a career. Um, and I also want to claim that uh, career along with the other hyphenated careers, maybe I don't know, academic, author, whatever. I really want to claim that because that's also my way of giving back to the form that has literally shaped my identity. The only other thing I would say in terms of form and the importance of form, um, I think I stay very curious and grounded about formal complexities in South Asian arts or dance, in South Asian dance. And in it, I am looking very keenly at the intersections of arts and humanities, intersections of arts and literature, intersections of arts and philosophy, arts and history, arts and music. So I am also not just grounded in that one form, but I'm also uh, curious and looking at many other forms. So, for example, my book project with McFarland Publishers was called Dance Technology and Social Justice, and here I looked at Ananya Dance Theater. It's a contemporary dance company based in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and I did ethnography as research, and I was there for about, I mean, I wasn't there for 10 years, but I kept going back and forth. So that has been my experience with really also looking at what newness and innovation means. So although I say that I'm a fossil and I love being grounded in an older traditional form, I do experiment with my body with newer forms and newer challenges that are out there. Because that way I can see the whole spectrum. I love the comprehensive. I love to work in large comprehensive projects. Hence, I work with like pre-K all the way to scholars. So this also gives me a breadth of the South Asian richness, aesthetic richness of staying sort of grounded in the historical and the traditional, but also seeing its contemporary relevance. Going off of Timothy Chalamet's, remarks. I actually saw him for the first time. I never knew who that person was, but I've heard so much about him
Oh.
from my young folks. They love him, right?
Yes.
And I saw him with his girlfriend at the Oscars, and they're such a beautiful pair. So beautiful.
I do have to say he is, in my opinion, a very good actor.
Mhm.
I
Okay,
really like,
okay.
yeah, that he is one of the top for his generation,
That's
despite what you said.
amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing. Good to know. Good to know. Yeah.
Um, One of the things you talked about a couple of the books that you are in the process of writing or have written, and one of those is Democracy in Plie that you've written with GRL. We don't always think of dance and governments as being interlocked, but they really can be. Can you talk through a little bit about what inspired that book and how we can explore those political ideas through movement and form?
Right, right. Um, well, I shouldn't bite more than I chew, or that phrase. I'm not a political economist. I'm not a political science scholar by any means. I'm a dance studies scholar. I move and think, and that teaching compendium. It's a teaching compendium, Democracy in Plie. It arose from a teaching requirement. My chair, Professor Reginald Turowitz, she said, Kaustavi, we all have to teach this course, which connects American democracy, which connects with American democracy. And then fine, I found my sort of inspiration for teaching research. So I started looking at books around American politics and dance, right? So I discovered this book called Claire Craft's Dancing Diplomats. I discovered, excuse me, Martha Graham, this huge name. Her claim to one of the claim to fame was American Document. It was a very popular dance production, and these different artifacts sort of slowly shaped the 12 weeks, the 15 weeks of teaching content. And when I'm doing new teaching prep, I'm writing a book. I feel it's a very rigorous way of rigorous, fun, engaging, and peer reviewed, right? I like that portion also. It's peer reviewed, then I'm not like solely responsible for blabbering truth. Uh, so I like that, and the same thing happened with Dancing Worlds, the previous my first publication with GRL. At that time, um, I had zero books to my credit. So thanks to GRL for trusting me, trusting a newbie. But today, yes, I have 2 to 3 teaching compendiums, and I have two research books with McFarland and UNC Press. So yeah, I enjoy writing, but I enjoy writing from an embodied perspective. So dance in American democracy was hard for me because I couldn't dance myself, right? This is primarily research in dance and politics in the United States. And here we are looking at these big documents of Federalist Papers and US Constitution and a letter from a Birmingham jail, Declaration of Independence. So these are big, lofty documents that have a lot written. But I was surprised that nobody else really made connections of dance in a direct way. I was actually surprised. If it did exist, I would just take that textbook and teach. But but it didn't exist, so I thought I would do it. And I enjoyed the process. It was hard for sure. I just also got my green card, and I'm married to a citizen. So I think I'm going down the citizenship route. So I also felt morally required to like know these documents, right? Like, because if I'm going that route, if I'm going that path, I might be rigorous and scholarly about it. So that was one other impetus. What else can I say about that project? In terms of the title, plie is a bent knee sort of a thing, and one can take it literally, like plie, bent knee, democracy in that sort of a dance framework. But you could also take it metaphorically, where one can look at, how democracy and dance could be meters and checks and balances for one another, like how democratic is dance, how is dance democratic, or vice versa, like the dance of democracy. So one could also have a play on words in terms of the metaphor. And also looking at the political climates we are in, it's interesting all over the world. There is a surgence of conservatives, of sort of a conservative political agenda, good or bad, and it's there all over the world, right? So then that's also one other thought, like, is democracy in plie? Is that the question? So yeah.
In our research, we did find that you have done and choreographed works that do respond to like social change or current environmental disasters like the wildfires in Florida or in California, or the systematic gun violence that we have here in the US. How do those things inspire you in your dance, and how do you use that to promote your positions or your ideas?
I don't think I can claim myself as an activist by any means. However, social justice issues inform my work in many ways. And I have really been annoyed and surprised. Probably also I'm more emotional than intellectual. I wish it was the other way around, but that's the reality. Um, and in that capacity, I do think I feel like surprised at the weaponization of young bodies and young lives, sort of in
Mhm.
gun violence. So I can't help but worry about that. So that did feature in my choreographic journey over some time. Like I did a film called Pukar that was during the pandemic. It was during a faculty concert, which was everything became online at that time. I did another in-person piece, uh, which was also a duet, and that was on stage, and that was for a live concert. And that did talk about like the face, right? How our face, we have these facial expressions of positivity, the smile, and how that sort of changes into a grimace. How that sort of changes into this the spell of death that looms large at any instant of time. So those are some of the expressional or other choreographic means that I have used. For the forest fires, I cannot claim choreography rights. I'm a dancer for that one. I'm primarily a performer, the performer who's commissioning work. So this choreographer, she is Dr. Rohini Dandavate. She's herself a scholar, author, choreographer, dancer. She lives in California and definitely experiences in firsthand um, forest fires. And that was her choreography. And that was also interesting because where um, she had done an earlier piece called On Fire, and that earlier piece was not necessarily about social issues. It was primarily about cultural dimensions of fire across Africanist aesthetics, across South Asian value systems, across um, Euro American values, or even across Indigenous American values. But when she reimagined fire, it took the connotation of social environmental justice, and we looked at forest fires in California in our research for that particular piece.
I know we've talked a lot about the intersectionality of dance, avoiding elitism, trying to open it up to different demographics. And in some of the work that you've done, you do try to incorporate and engage with feminists and queer and transnational identities. Um, how would you say that you do that in the classroom?
I feel any growth towards progressive politics is positive. So in a classroom where it was safe to share pronouns, to ask for particular positionalities, I would do that, right? As simple as that. We would start a class with the comfort zones. Touch is a big thing for dance, right? But being conscientious of consent. So that's also very important. Um, I think I really feel the way to go about is more transnational than nationalistic, than national. At least the transnational allows for uh, ideational engagement, or more affinity group engagement across nationalistic boundaries. Um, Patriotism is important. I mean, I guess whether I like it or not, I am patriotic in an Indian context. and that sort of is ingrained. What you learn, it's really difficult to unlearn what you learn under 10, right?
Mhm.
So yeah. But yeah, I do think that I encountered these terms: transnationalism, feminism, queer theory. I encountered all these terms in research, right, in grad school. And I don't think uh, that I like them just to be research terms in ivory tower writing. I like the fact that they navigate the different spaces that I walk into. For example, the work that I did with Ananya Dance Theater, they are a progressive social justice based company where uh, they ground themselves in plural identities, questioning gender binary, and their theoretical grounding also comes from a transnational feminist perspective. So I think that that is important to me. That is really important. And and also to underscore that, to say that, I started talking to you by noting how I'm a traditional practitioner. So I still continue to be the fossil in the room, and tradition has issues, right? To begin with, it has gender stereotypes. To begin with, it has certain elitist bias. To begin with, it has very particular notions of beauty, which could be problematized and questioned by transnational politics or queer feminist aesthetics or sort of ethics in general, right? So I like to share that. Yes, I see the beauty in the groundedness, in the rigor of these traditions, but I stay very informed with the innovation in the field, right? And those are important, even in every practice that I do, so that I don't do the traditional form to perpetuate existing problems, right? Perpetuate existing hierarchies.
When you teach or have workshops in India versus when you have them in the United States, what changes or what stays the same?
Yeah, I mean, India is very different, where I am engaging with, if I'm engaging in a higher education capacity, um, people are more familiar with these forms that I'm talking about. So they are aware of these forms. If I'm giving a lecture, they can connect to, relate to culturally. There are stories or metaphors or references that I'm saying that's also easily relatable. Here, that's not possible. Everything is contextualized. I make sure to start at the beginning wherever I am, just starting at the beginning, and really being very clear of what I'm sharing, very clear of the movement references or the cultural references or the story references, just being very, very articulate and clear about that.
I did notice you talked about K-12 and kind of that early education. Do you do like specific promotion with different schools? What does that look like for you to get young students interested not only in dance, but also in traditional dance like Odissi?
Right, right. So I'm very grateful to my chair, to my department. So I'm able to create these Sunday morning town halls where a lot of kids from the community, a lot of adults from the community, they come. They are series, but they are also drop-ins. So um, it's a fun little group. There's dancing happening over a period of 3 hours, and for some of them, this is just a one time, or for some of them, this is just a community engagement, uh, babysitting for some parents. But I think it's a nice way of really like addressing the pulse of the community in a danced setting. And that's my research setting also, right? Like that is also where I am constantly um, investigating newer ways of engagement, newer ways of growth, newer ways of articulation, right? The way I articulate in India, or I got articulated too in my training, that modality is obsolete for sure. Um, even though my teachers are great teachers, right? But that particular modality of teaching and learning needs to be adapted to the US context and the particular lived experiences of the students. The students here, they're not just experiencing India or Indian culture. So it's important to contextualize even their experiences and not make them confused, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of a general question I have. Is Odissi more of a traditional, like one teacher, one student, kind of an apprentice guru type of situation?
Yes,
Okay, that's what I
yes. It
thought.
is an apprentice learning model. And
Mhm.
one of my professors, colleagues in my department, she says that I work a lot with her, and a lot of my community engaged youth work also is in conjunction with her work. Dr. Marissa Nesbitt. So one thing she says is really poignant. She says that, you know, your training is less about content and more about relationship. So a lot of this Guru Shishya apprentice learning is not just about dance learning, but primarily about, you know, self growth and self realization. It's sort of more philosophical than just arts education. So yes, in short, to answer your question, definitely it's the norm is one student, one teacher. But it often is the case that you have slightly more than one teacher. Like I have three, you know. So it's not, but then that is like the expectation, that is the tradition.
And that is different from the US culture where you had one teacher and about 30 students in one class, at least in the early days when I took dance. So,
Yeah, yeah. In terms of scale, can you believe it? It's impossible. It's
mhm.
impossible to have that kind of relationship building and absolute alignment of thought, embodiment, and action with a with multiplicity of bodies in the room. Yeah.
Yeah.
The theme of service has come up several times. And can you tell us more about the community impact, the Odissi Odyssey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So, since 2019, we've had a steady group of artists, educators, students, scholars come to UNC Charlotte, share their craft. So, it is definitely the largest Odissi dance gathering outside India in a consistent capacity over like more than 5 years now. And I think it has started creating more space, more inroads into how students here, younger generations here, are viewing uh, their sort of identity as artists. Definitely, it is a mainstream validation that has been a rarity. The mainstream validation is important. And I will say that, you know, there are like almost two lived realities, like people like us who are Indian dancers and in academia, we are too far and too between. Like we are probably, you can just count maybe 50 of us or even less. However, in terms of scale, if you see just in Charlotte, there are about 300 community dance teachers. So think about the landscape of the US, and you just have these 50 of us. We practice American exceptionalism also, right? Like we really want to, you know, be territorial, like not let not do barriers, like have barriers to entry and stuff. So I do feel that this like opens up some of those notions and makes you know, shows the real scale, right? Like we cannot be elitist. We are not just 50 people. We perhaps have a PhD and that's it, and that's why we can teach in higher education. But the truth is there are many of us out there, whether we like it or not. And yeah, the scale is huge, and I feel Odyssey, it's important for me or it's important for the university to actually be community engaged, be community focused. And we understand that's not always possible, right? Because our tenure lines require us to do research. And when we say research, we need to be speaking to peer-reviewed communities. And the community settings that we work in, that's not necessarily can be can fall into like these existing domains and definitions of research. So that's why it's hard. It's really hard. And I will say, just for me, I took almost 5 years to understand how to even articulate what I do. The hours and hours I put to service and just articulate that into research. And I think I've finally been able to do it. It took time, but I've finally been able to do it. Yeah.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. There's so much I'm going to take away from this. And now I keep thinking, okay, I need to make sure I look this up later and learn more about it. Is there any part of your story that we haven't touched that you want to share with our listeners and our audience?
I mean, I think you've done pretty good research. Yeah, I've also enjoyed a lot talking to Deanna and Michelle. I mean, the only other thing I would say is um I love the relationships I have built, and that's very particular to dance as a field and the culturally situated landscape of Indian dance also. So I think those relationships that I have curated for myself as an apprentice uh, from various teachers have been so meaningful, and some of them have taught me direct dance, right? But some of them have taught me to write, and some of them have taught me um, to think differently. So yeah, just noting that gratitude would be the only word. Gratitude and service, those two would be the founding pillars of my relationship to dance.
I think that's definitely going on one of our quotes.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that a lot.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Can I Get a Retake, a podcast by Great River Learning. If you liked the episode, show your support by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. For detailed show notes and transcripts, visit greatriverlearning.com. Can I Get a Retake is brought to you by hosts Michelle Manaman and Deanna Plussel. Our show is produced and edited by Michaela Albee and Maggie Christensen. Artwork for the podcast is crafted by Michelle Manaman. Our intro music is courtesy of Comma Media. We'll be back soon with another captivating chat with a top GRL educator.